We're joined by Mr. Manoj Badale of Rajasthan Royals. Manoj, happy with your shopping?
Yeah, no, look, the third auction's always a little bit unusual because you're filling very specific gaps. And what was challenging today was that you had a lot of money in the room for a relatively small number of slots that needed filling. So the dynamic of the third auction of the cycle is always that you get some big numbers on some key players, but we were very lucky because we had 4 or 5 very clear targets, and certainly of our priority targets, we got most of the players.
Was Yashasvi Jaiswal one of your targets? He is the top headline of the day.
He was without question, certainly one of our 3 or 4 most important picks today. We've
But
got
no one expected him to go for the sum that he went for eventually.
We actually thought he'd go much higher. He's young, but he's got immense ability. We've had a look at him in our trials for some time now. In fact, we wanted to get him last year, but he didn't qualify for the auction because he hadn't played any first-class cricket. So he's a player we've been looking at for nearly 2.5 years now.
That's very long. He's just 17. Manoj, if we look at the auction overall, it's all yellow today. There are so many Australians who've been picked up for such high prices.
Yes.
Is there any reason that, it was there was so much Australian focus?
Yeah, I think firstly, Cricket Australia has encouraged the Australians to play because of the 2020 World Cup.
Wow, that's nice.
And that's not always the case, especially with the Australian fast bowlers. There's sometimes a bit of tension between their availability for Australia and their availability for the IPL. But I think because of the World Cup, Cricket Australia has been very keen to push its players to get experience in the IPL, which is the closest thing you can get to World Cup quality.
Some players like Dale Steyn, Tom Curran, you bought Tom Curran, they came back and then you bought them.
Yes.
Why wasn't there any initial interest about them?
Because I think all teams are balancing a budget across a certain number of targets, and you've got your absolute priority targets who are players that are likely to play in your first 11. We're blessed with 4 very strong overseas players in Butler, Stokes, Smith and Archer. So by definition, a lot of our overseas picks are going to play specific games on specific wickets. And so you need to get for us the priority today was to get our Indian players, which we've done. And only when we had done that did we want to spend on our overseas backup players.
I'll have to ask you about Jaydev Unadkat. You released him and then you bought him back for a lesser sum. Was that really the strategy, to release him in the auction pool and see if you can buy him for a budget budget price?
I'm not sure if I described 3 crores as a budget price, but
lesser than 8 crores.
JD is we're very happy with him. He's in my view got some very unfair criticism because of his price point. Now, as I've tried to explain to many people, players don't choose their price point. The auction chooses their price point. So I think with the heavy price tag he had 2 years ago, he got some very unfair criticism. He's one of a very small number of genuine left arm quicks in India who can bowl at the death, and that's a very, very valuable role within a side. And our strategy was to release him and buy him back for less than 8.4. Actually, we weren't sure we would get him for less than 8, and we were prepared to go to that number if needed.
A couple of last questions. There was a lot of focus on the under-19 players. Is it because of the World Cup that's coming up? So you guys are specifically looking at these guys who are going to get into the World Cup?
No, I think look, we pick players that we think are ready to make an impact, and India's got an extremely exciting and credible group of young players. We also have to have half an eye on the fact that it's the final year in a cycle, so there'll be some retention of players. So having a few youngsters to look at and consider for retention in the next cycle is useful.
One last question. You have the youngest player from the auction, and KKR has picked up the oldest, Pravin Tambe. Did you expect that to happen? A 48-year-old is now going to play in the IPL.
Listen, if there's anyone who believes in Pravin Tambe, it's the Royals. He
Yes,
played for us for
that's why
6
I'm
or 7
asking you
years.
that question.
Pravin is a fantastic human being. He's a fantastic cricketer, and he's got fantastic fitness. And if there's one person that I expect to be bowling leg spin at the age of 70, it's Pravin Tambe. So I'm very pleased for him.
Good Lord.